Well, I guess you could say I'm a storyteller, but this isn't just any story, it's my family's story, our people's story. My name's Alicia Johnson, and I'm here to tell you about a time that could have changed everything. A time of hope, struggle, and broken promises. Freedom is not just a gift, it's a responsibility that requires constant vigilance and protection. The year was 1865. The Civil War had just ended, and for the first time, millions of Black Americans tasted freedom. But freedom, well, it was just the beginning. This period, known as Reconstruction, held the promise of reshaping American society. At the heart of our story is my family, the Johnsons.
Sarah, can you believe it? We're free. Really free.
For my ancestors, freedom meant the chance to build a life of their own choosing, but the path ahead was far from clear. What happened next were 3 amendments to the Constitution that promised to change everything. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th granted citizenship and equal protection under the law. And the 15th, it gave Black men the right to vote.
That's right, little ones. And maybe one day I could even run for office.
But even in these early days of hope, the road ahead was far from smooth. Old hatreds don't disappear overnight.
Look at you, acting all high and mighty now. You think you're better than us?
No, sir, I don't, but I do think we're equal.
In that moment, my great-great-grandfather showed a kindness that many would have thought impossible. But that's the thing about freedom. It gives us the choice to be better than our past. As Frederick Douglass said at the time, we are not to be saved by the captain, but by the crew. Little did they know, the crew was about to face a storm like no other. The years that followed saw incredible changes. Black Americans voted, ran for office, opened businesses, and began to build lives as free citizens. It was a time of hope and progress. But dark forces were gathering, determined to undo all that had been gained. The Ku Klux Klan and other hate groups emerged, spreading terror and violence. As quickly as it had begun, the dream of true equality was being violently challenged. The promise of Reconstruction was under threat, and my family, like so many others, found themselves caught in the storm. You know, it's funny. When you hear about Reconstruction in school, it's usually just a paragraph or two. But for my family and for millions of Black Americans, it was everything. For the first time, Black men were elected to office, from local councils all the way up to the United States Congress. It was like a dream come true.
Mama, is this really for us?
Yes, baby. This is your school. You're going to learn so much.
Education was a priority. Schools sprang up everywhere, and for the first time, Black children had the chance to learn freely. But progress? Well, it wasn't always smooth. For every step forward, there seemed to be forces pulling us back. Despite the challenges, our communities were growing stronger. We were building businesses, creating opportunities, forging our own path.
Marcus, can you believe it? Our own business.
It's wonderful, Sarah, but
My great-great-grandfather Marcus, he had dreams of running for office. But those dreams, they came with a price.
I won't let them scare me away, Sarah. Our people need a voice.
I know, Marcus, but please, be careful.
It was a time of such hope, you know, but also fear. Always that undercurrent of fear. And then, in 1870, something happened that no one could have imagined just a few years before.
The time has come for America to be true to her founding principles. We have made great strides, but our journey is far from over.
Do you hear that? That's one of us speaking for all of us. Remember this day.
Dad, do you think I could do that someday?
With hard work and determination, son, you could do anything.
But even as we celebrated these victories, there were dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The backlash, well, it was coming. And it was going to change everything. You know, my grandma used to say that hope is like a flame. It can light up the darkest night, but they called themselves things like the Ku Klux Klan. But really, they were just hate wrapped up in white sheets.
Sarah, get the children inside now.
These groups, they didn't just want to scare us. They wanted to strip away everything we'd gained. Our rights, our dignity, our lives.
Marcus, what are we going to do? It's getting worse every day.
We stand our ground, Sarah. This is our home, our country.
But standing your ground? Sometimes that came at a terrible price. What happened in Colfax? It was more than just a massacre. It was a message, a bloody declaration that our right to vote, to participate in democracy, it meant nothing to those who wanted to keep us down.
All those lives and all those dreams.
How could they do this? Where's the government? Where's the protection we were promised?
But that protection, it never came. The federal government, they just looked the other way. And it wasn't just Colfax. All across the South, Black Americans faced increasing violence and oppression. The dream of Reconstruction, it was turning into a nightmare.
Oh, Papa, are we going to have to leave?
I don't know, baby. I just don't know.
You see, that's the thing about freedom. It's not just something you're given. It's something you have to fight for every single day. And sometimes the fight feels impossible. But even in those dark days, my family, our people, we didn't give up. We couldn't. Because giving up, that would mean they'd won. And we weren't about to let that happen.
We'll find a way, Marcus. We always do.
Little did they know, the real test was yet to come. The unraveling of everything they'd fought for was just around the corner. You know, there's this saying, the night is darkest just before the dawn. But for Black Americans after Reconstruction, that dawn, it never seemed to come. In 1877, something happened that would change everything. They called it the Compromise of 1877, but really, it was more like a betrayal. The deal was simple. Rutherford B. Hayes would become president, and in exchange, federal troops would be withdrawn from the South.
They're really leaving us?
What does this mean for us, Marcus?
It meant that the federal government was abandoning us, turning its back on the very people it had promised to protect. And in the vacuum left by the departing troops, darker forces began to rise. And just like that, all the progress we'd made began to unravel. Jim Crow laws spread like a poison, segregating every aspect of life. It was as if a curtain of oppression had fallen across the South, dividing our world into white and colored.
But Papa, why can't I go to school with my friends anymore?
Because some people are afraid of change, son. But we'll keep fighting. We have to.
The end of Reconstruction didn't just mean political setbacks. It meant economic hardship too. Jobs became scarcer, opportunities fewer. But even in the face of these challenges, families like the Johnsons found ways to persevere. Black political power was stripped away piece by piece. Voting restrictions, literacy tests, poll taxes, all designed to keep us from having a voice.
Sorry, can't read, can't vote.
I fought for this country. I have the right to vote.
But even in those dark times, there were moments of, well, I guess you could call it stubborn hope.
Knowledge is power. They can take away our rights, but they can't take what's in our minds.
You see, that's the thing about my family, about our people. No matter how hard they tried to push us down, we always found a way to rise. The failure of Reconstruction, it didn't just affect my great-great-grandparents. Its shadow stretches all the way to today. But you know what? We're still here, still fighting. Because that promise of true freedom and equality, it's not broken. It's just unfulfilled, for now. This story isn't over. It's up to all of us to write the next chapter, to learn from our past and fight for a better future. Because the promise of Reconstruction, it's still alive. And it's up to us to fulfill it.
Imagine being denied a basic human need because of your skin color. Under the Jim Crow laws, segregated public restrooms became painful symbols of enforced racial hierarchy across the American South. Signs reading "white only" and "colored only" were fixtures in train stations, schools, and businesses, reducing Black Americans to second-class status. The fight for integrated restrooms was about more than convenience. It was about dignity, respect, and the right to exist equally in public spaces. In the 1950s, Black activists risked arrest and violence by challenging these laws, staging sit-ins and deliberate restroom tests to confront segregation head-on. One pivotal moment occurred during the Montgomery bus boycott, when Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat sparked national attention to broader issues of segregated facilities. The struggle over public restrooms became a flashpoint for the civil rights movement, exposing the daily humiliations Black Americans endured and fueling demands for justice. Victory came gradually, as court rulings and the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 finally outlawed segregation in public accommodations, marking a crucial step toward equality.
I'm James Washington, and I've seen a lot in my 80 years, but there's one story that needs to be told. It was 1955, and the world was different then. Segregation wasn't just a word, it was a way of life. Every day we faced a barrage of signs, colored only, whites only. They were everywhere, reminding us of our place, but it was the restrooms that got to me, something so basic, so human, and yet the indignity of it all. Having to plan your day around where you could and couldn't relieve yourself. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was dehumanizing, like we were less than human. I remember that day clearly. I was downtown, my bladder fit to burst, and the colored restroom was blocks away. The sun was beating down, sweat trickling down my back, and there it was, a whites-only restroom, right in front of me. I stood there staring at that sign, my heart pounding. What was I risking? My safety? My life? But in that moment, I realized something. My dignity? That was worth fighting for. I thought about my father and all he had taught me about standing up for what's right. He always said, "Son, your rights are not given to you. Sometimes you have to take them." With my heart in my throat, I made my decision. I reached for that door handle, knowing full well what could happen. That day, that simple act of using a restroom, it was my first step into the civil rights movement, and I never looked back. I thought about my father, how he'd always told me to stand tall, to know my worth. I thought about my future children. What kind of world would I be leaving for them if I didn't take a stand? I pushed open that door, half expecting the world to end, but it didn't. It was just a restroom. Clean, well-maintained, so different from the rundown, colored facilities we were forced to use. As I washed my hands, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I saw a man who had taken a stand, however small. Walking out, I felt different. Scared, yes, but also proud. It was a tiny act of rebellion, but it was mine. That day I learned that dignity isn't given. Sometimes you have to take it. It wasn't just about restrooms, it was about being seen as human, about equality, about the right to exist in public spaces without shame or fear. Years later, when I joined the civil rights movement, I thought back to that day. How far we'd come and how far we had to go. I marched in Selma, sat in at lunch counters and registered voters. Each time I drew strength from that first small act. It wasn't easy. We faced violence, arrests, and so much hatred. But we persevered, because we knew that our dignity, our humanity, was not negotiable. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 finally outlawed segregation in public facilities, but laws can change overnight. Hearts and minds, that's a longer struggle. It takes time, patience, and persistent effort to truly change society. Today, as I see young people still fighting for equality, I remember, every small act of courage matters, whether it's standing up to racism, sexism, or any form of discrimination. It's a continuous struggle passed down from one generation to the next. Each era faces its own challenges, but the core fight for dignity remains the same. Our struggle for dignity shaped the civil rights movement, and it continues to shape our nation today. So remember this story, and remember, your dignity is always worth fighting for. It's not just about laws, it's about how we treat each other every day, in every interaction. The fight for civil rights has evolved over the years, but its essence remains the same. From the struggles of the 1960s to the movements of today, each generation has taken up the mantle, pushing for a more just and equal society. And to the young people out there, I say this: never let anyone make you feel less than human. You are worthy, you are equal, and your voice matters. The fight for true equality isn't over, but with each generation, we get a little closer. So stand tall, speak up, and keep pushing for a world where everyone's dignity is respected. Because in the end, that's what we're all fighting for, the right to be fully, unequivocally human. And that, my friends, is a fight worth having. It's a fight that requires courage, persistence, and above all, hope for a better tomorrow. This is James Washington signing off. Remember your history and keep making it, because the story of civil rights, well, it's still being written, and you're the ones writing it now. Every day with every action, you have the power to shape a more just world.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for our next video here at Rondia Coffer channel. We appreciate you taking time to watch our videos. Thank you!